It's so dark and yellowy, and I need to change that. Hey past Camm. Today we got fired. Why do all the really good moments in our life seem to revolve around us getting fired? But no, seriously, it was actually a really good thing. It was just something I no longer have a need for that job, and that job no longer had a need for me. It was actually a very mutual thing, very understanding, and still gonna be friends with my boss, and that, like, yeah. After that, went to uni, loving, like, the Wednesday lecture on film history. Absolutely fantastic. Best teacher in the world, so eccentric, so charismatic, and he just explains everything in such a cool way. I can't help but sit through the entire, the first hour of the class and just be like, whoa, mind blown, what is going on? I can't believe that that is linked with that, and that is connected to like this, and like if you trace it back hundreds of years, it's still totally relevant. And then after that, we had our first university club meeting, which was kind of an introductory to the Deacon TV club. So that was really cool as well, because it was literally just sitting in a room full of people who knew what it was like to edit stuff and write stuff and create stuff. And even though everybody basically had in common, you know, wanting to make something to do with moving image, they all had their different areas of expertise. Like, people were animators, there were people who were like writers. One was like attempting to write a novel at the moment, which was cool. Yeah, screenwriters and editors, and people who had done short films, people who created miniseries. Like, it's just really cool to be around people like that who you can really just relate to, which is awesome. So another thought that's been on my mind, not really, it adds up to like a grand total of 15 minutes of thinking time. It was just a thought that I had while reading the autobiography of a drug addict. And the analogy in my head did not break down immediately, so I thought I'd include it and share it with you, past Camm. Alright, let's see if I can put this into words. Basically, in this autobiography, he talks about his progression from, you know, soft drugs to hardcore drugs, and eventually just heroin, and becoming thoroughly addicted to heroin. At one point, a girl that he was dating at the time told him that he needed to quit. And so he made the choice to quit. And he went to rehab, and a friend helped him through it, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, he ended up breaking up with that girlfriend after remaining sober for an amount of time. As soon as he broke up with that girl, he didn't see the need to stay sober. So straight away, he had that moment where he was like, fuck it, I'm gonna smoke heroin. And he did. But he talked about that moment where he just kind of gave in to his temptation. Because the whole time that he'd been sober, it hadn't been that he didn't want to smoke heroin, it's that he had enough willpower to overcome that urge. Which is like effort. It's putting an effort into fighting that desire to do something. And then he equated that moment of just being like, fuck, it's almost being better than the high from the actual drug itself. And then he compared that to death, and how that moment, you know, when death happens and you just accept it and there's nothing you can do about that moment of utter release from the pressures of the world. And like I said, don't think too hard about this, okay? But imagine if before we are born, before we come into existence, that we, and we do exist before then, as atoms spread throughout all of the food prior to our parents eating it. I was thinking about how possibly in that state, we could be on a drug, on an existential drug that is just keeping us from interacting in the world and keeping us from having conscious thought. And then what happens is we get injected with life and go into sort of rehab stage, which takes about 9 months. There's probably some comparisons that can be made between getting injected with life and penis. What? When we finish that 9-month rehabilitation state and it gets to the point where we have no more of that existential drug in our system, we come out kicking and screaming. We don't like it. We want the drug back. We want to not exist anymore. But eventually we come to terms with that. We get used to it and we learn to enjoy life. We start learning about all the things that we couldn't have learnt about before. And this goes on. And there are parts of it that we enjoy and there are parts of it that we don't like. But essentially overall we enjoy that feeling of being in control and being sober from this existential drug that was keeping us from reaching our full potentials. We all cope with being sober differently. We all get different things out of it. But then from about 20 to 30 years into this sober state, the symptoms, the withdrawal symptoms really start to kick in. We start to age. Eventually we get to this point where the symptoms of being sober become too much and our bodies are forced to give in to that existential drug that puts us in a non-existent high. As I said, don't read too much into it. The analogy will break down very quickly, but I thought some nice comparisons could be made there. So, you know, take what you will out from that. Maybe I'll explore it under a different light at another time. But anyway, past Camm, I will talk to you tomorrow. Also, I wasn't on any drugs when I came up with this.